The sporting goods industry is in the blood of our first inductee, Peter Coppolino of Mitchell and Ness. Peter's father, Sisto, started at Mitchell and Ness in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in 1917 and took over the business in 1950. Peter began working at the Mitchell and Ness store at the age of 11 and took over the store in 1978. Historic baseball caps were one of Peter's specialties. He thought jerseys, vintage jerseys, might also interest baseball fans after he saw some samples of old wool flannel at a local manufacturer. The throwback jerseys were such a big hit, Peter made it the sole business of Mitchell and Ness Nostalgia Company. Fans of all ages caught on to them for football, basketball, and hockey, spread out across all the sports. And now I would like to ask Fran Dietrich, Vice President and co-founder of Mitchell and Ness Nostalgia Company, and Peter's wife, to come up and say a few words about Peter. Fran?
So I am Fran Dietrich. I am also, for the past almost 38 years, Mrs. Peter Coppolino. Marrying Peter in 1983 came with a condition. I must quit my job and come to work with him. At the time, Peter's business and many other local sporting goods businesses were shrinking or disappearing. We moved Peter's store from a 20,000 square foot location to a 1,200 square foot location. We also closed a retail store and a ski rental operation in the Pocono Mountains. You bet there was major shrinkage. We found ourselves, me, Peter, and Joanne Graham, in our new small space, selling the remaining hard goods and concentrating on the team uniform business, all the while keeping eyes open to finding something unique to sell, something perhaps that the larger retailers were not carrying. One day in 1985, a man walked into the store looking to have 2 vintage, real baseball jerseys repaired. Being in the business of creating uniforms, Peter said, "Sure, I can do that for you." And the light bulb of an idea went off. He asked if he might also make a replica of the jerseys. Peter knew a nearby manufacturer who had a stock of old wool flannel. And above our new small store was a backdate magazine repository. The sport magazines would be the perfect research material. Here was the unique opportunity. I truly believe that Peter's remarkable characteristic is his ability to pivot, to not sink in his heels and say, "I'm a sporting goods manufacturer, I'm a sporting goods retailer," and that is that. He could immediately see and seize the opportunity in front of him. The Mitchell and Ness Nostalgia Company was born, and we have had a great 25 years in business together. So here comes Peter Coppolino.
Peter Coppolino. Where's Peter? Welcome, Hall of Famer, Peter Coppolino.
Wait, I forgot my glasses. Are my glasses on the table? Yeah, I can't do this without my glasses. Oh, this is exciting, I have to tell you. One thing that Fran did not mention in her introduction was that she was the one who pushed me into the modern era of nostalgia. Fran said to me one day, she said, in 1996, she said this, she says, "You know, Peter, you're stuck in old guys' nostalgia. You make baseball jerseys for Ty Cobb, Babe Ruth, Ted Williams, Stan Musial, Jackie Robinson, Willie Mays, Mickey Mantle, etc." She said, "What about the young fans? What are they going to get, you know?" So, and she said, "How about people that are 25 years younger than you, Peter?" So I thought about it for a minute. That's all it took. And I started to do the modern era nostalgia players, all the guys from 1970 through 1996. Baseball ended the wool flannel era in 1970 and started wearing double knits then all the way up. Well, I followed that pattern and that advice for the NBA, the NFL, and the NHL also, and it proved very, very fruitful. I have to take a moment and thank Greg Baldwin for nominating me for this honor. Greg is a sporting goods industry individual who's been in the industry for 44 years. I've known Greg since the 70s when he was at Gold Medal Sporting Goods and then Schuylkill Valley. And it was wonderful of Greg to put the effort in to nominate me for something like this. I'm very, very appreciative to Greg. I also need to thank all the uniform manufacturers that I used from 1970 to 1983 as a team retailer and team dealer. The knowledge that I gained from speccing high school and college uniforms is really the basis and education that allowed me to pursue this new pursuit of the Mitchell & Ness Nostalgia Company. And the companies that did this, you know, Russell Athletic, or what you might remember, Russell Southern, if anybody's here from the old school days, Wilson and Rawlings and Spalding. In Philadelphia, there was a company called Coane Manufacturing, and then, of course, Maple Manufacturing in Philadelphia. It was without that knowledge to start up my experiment, I probably could not have done this. So I had to create a mission statement for Mitchell & Ness, and the mission that I had for Mitchell & Ness was that the Mitchell & Ness Nostalgia Company mission was to recreate the history of professional sports through the evolution of the uniform. So that's what I focused on. I wanted to recreate the history of sports as the uniform evolved, showing the uniform changing. You may not know this, but between 1901 and 1996, Major League Baseball alone had 5,000 uniform changes. I got around to doing maybe 900 of them, but it was a labor of love, and all of the history was there for me to try and recreate. I could not have pulled this off, you know, without a man named Martin Sirkin at Maple Manufacturing. Martin had a local manufacturing company where I found all the wool flannel. He financed me, he believed in me, and helped me to get started back in 1985. It was a wonderful thing. Martin has passed away by now, but without Martin, I wouldn't be standing here at all with you guys. Sitting at the table are some very important individuals that enabled me to do this process and keep it up. And I want to mention some of them. In fact, I want to mention all of them. And actually, when I mention them, I want them to stand up so you know who they are. They're as important as me, if not more important. So the first person that we're going to talk about is Dave Eshelman from the Levy Company. Stand up, Dave. There's Dave Eshelman from Levy. Dave and the Levy Company go all the way back to 1922. And the Levy Company, and I guess a lot of you in here probably know the Levy Company because they do the lettering of all Major League Baseball jerseys, or did for many years for Rawlings, Wilson, Spalding, many, many other companies. They provide the lettering and the embroidery for those companies. So when I got to know Dave and realized I needed that kind of help to make sure that what I do is completely accurate, Dave was there for me the whole time. And he's an important part of the history of the quality of the jerseys and the things that we did. I want to take a moment and tell you my favorite story. People always ask me, what's the favorite jersey that I like the most? You know, they might think I would say Mickey Mantle, or I might say Johnny Unitas, you know, or Wayne Gretzky, or somebody like that, but no. It was Stan Musial of the St. Louis Cardinals. And the reason is because the beautiful Cardinal logo was created from such a cottage industry event that occurred. And I'm going to tell you about what happened. In 1922, Branch Rickey was the vice president of the St. Louis Cardinals. Now, most people remember Branch Rickey as the general manager of the Brooklyn Dodgers, and he broke the color line with Jackie Robinson. But back in 1922, he was the vice president of the Cardinals. And so he was at a Presbyterian Brotherhood luncheon in February of 1922, and the woman running the luncheon, Miss Ellie Mae Schmidt, knew Rickey was coming. And she was at a loss what to do the place settings for the luncheon. And the story that I'm telling you was reported in the Sporting News in 1923. So it's a very reported story that I found in the Sporting News. So anyway, she looks out and she sees two cardinal birds on a branch outside the church. She says, oh, that's a great idea. So she breaks off some branches, she cuts out some cardinal birds, and she makes them as the place setting for everybody at the luncheon. And Branch was taken back so much by it that in 1922, the Cardinals came out with their first logo with the black bat and the two birds on the bat. And that's how it all started. Now, the reason I'm mentioning this is the Levy Company in 1922 was the company that embroidered those birds on the bats. And Dave and the Levy Company still has all the paperwork and all of the research that was going into making all of those Cardinal jerseys, all the way up through the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. So I had to tell you that story because that's the jersey that I'm the most fond of, and only because Madison Avenue and Major League Baseball didn't get a hold of it and make it in 35 different colors. It's held on all these years. So that's my favorite jersey. The next guy I want to talk about is Tony Koke. Stand up, Tony. Tony Koke is a preeminent collector, buyer, and seller of original, real garments. And in 1985 or 86, when I just got started and I thought I knew what I was doing, Tony calls me one day and he says, I think I can help you, Peter, with your accuracy. Things might be a little bit off. And that intimidated me. And I said, okay, Tony, I'm listening. And from that day on until 2008, when I finally sold Mitchell & Ness to Adidas, Tony has been like a research guru and provided much of the historic authenticity of a lot of jerseys. And Tony's collections that have passed through him go all the way back to the turn of the century. Things from, and I made a lot of jerseys from 1901 to 1920. And I got to thank you, Tony. It's been a lifetime of helping. Thank you, Tony. Thank you very much. The next person I want to really thank is Mark Widener. You have to stand up, Mark. Mark Widener is he's the CEO and founder of Powers Manufacturing. And Mitchell & Ness was actually founded in 1904, but Mark's company was founded in 1902. And Powers Manufacturing has been making fabulous uniforms of the highest quality ever since. Mark was one of many manufacturers who didn't know what to do with their wool flannel. And I ran into Mark and I said, well, I'll buy all your wool flannel. So he sold me thousands of yards of wool flannel, along with Rawlings selling me their wool flannel and Wilson selling me their wool flannel and many, many other companies thinking that the stuff was worthless. But when Mark did, I realized what great company he had and what he could manufacture. Mark made most of the double knits for me that were very, very popular and that really got us over the hump, making us a company known all around the country. Mark also made the very first Michael Jordan jerseys and the collections. I had rights with Michael Jordan. I was very lucky to get those rights. And Mark was the guy who made those fabulous jerseys. So I'm always indebted to Mark Widener of Powers Manufacturing. So a guy that I have known since 1987 who does the exact same thing that I do in the major leagues, he does for the minor leagues, the Negro leagues, the Latin leagues. He does it for college. He has also just recently acquired the rights to the NFL from jerseys from 1920 to 1969. He also just got rights to do all of the historically accurate jackets that I used to do and sweaters for Major League Baseball from 1901 to 1970. And he's one of my closest friends, Jerry Cohen of Ebbetsfield Flannels. And Jerry is an amazing researcher. In fact, if truth be told, so the major media is not here tonight, he's better than me. He really knows his stuff in a major, major way. So finally, I have to thank Joanne Graham. Joanne is sitting right there. Stand up, Joanne. Joanne. Joanne is my longest standing employee. Joanne has worked for me from 1984 until I sold the company in 2008. And Joanne is still with Mitchell & Ness today. And Joanne was there with Fran and myself in 1984-85. We were doing $200,000 a year in business. And it was just me, Joanne, and Fran. And by the time that I was ready to sell, we were doing over $40 million a year in business for many years. And Joanne is an integral part of the whole thing and still at Mitchell & Ness today. Thank you, Joanne. So, in order to do this business, there's lots of things that the general public has no idea about, and some of you guys may not know. We obviously needed licensing rights with the leagues, but we also needed licensing rights with all the players. So I had to negotiate licensing deals with NFL players, Major League Baseball players, and National Hockey League players. The NBA provided me with retired players. They had an organization to manage the retired players. They couldn't manage a lot of them really well. Charles Barkley still thinks I owe him $25,000, which I'm never giving to him. The guy is crazy. Michael Jordan called me one day and he said, Peter, he says, can I get a $5,000 credit for my children? They all want your stuff. And I thought about it for like a tenth of a second and I said, yeah, okay. We'll give you $5,000 credit, Michael, for your kids. So we were paying a lot of players. So one night in 2006, we're at a Super Bowl party, and I forget if it was Houston, which Super Bowl it was, because we had to go to so many of these darn things. And we're there, and Howie Long, Boomer Esiason, and Phil Simms are at the party, and I recognized them, obviously, and I knew I'd been making their jerseys, and we've been paying them pretty good money. So I went up to them, and my chest out, say, oh, I'm Peter Capolino, I'm Mitchell & Ness, I make all your jerseys. So Howie Long goes into his wallet, and he pulls out this check, and he says, well, we don't want to meet you. Who's this Fran Dietrich that signs all our checks? And so another deflated moment for me in the history of what I did. So I saw Joe Theismann outside and had some pictures taken and talked to Joe, and I made a lot of jerseys for Joe Theismann, and he was looking for more, and he was complimenting me on how high quality we made his jerseys. Oh, and another aside on Joe Theismann. Joe Theismann won the Super Bowl in 1982, and you know whose jerseys he was wearing? The whole team was wearing. Stand up again. Mark Widener made all those jerseys for Joe Theismann. So I had to tell Joe my Sammy Baugh story. A lot of people ask me, how do you choose? What's your marketing strategy? How did you do all this? And I said, I don't know. I just made players I liked. If I didn't like a player, I didn't make them. I didn't like Rose, so I didn't make them. You know, so what can I say? You know, we all have who we like and who we don't like. I didn't like Mike Schmidt that much anyway. But anyway, that's another story. We won't talk about Schmidt. Anyway, I loved Sammy Baugh. Now, Sammy Baugh, and you guys, this is old history, but I'm going to tell it to you anyway. Sammy Baugh played for the Washington Redskins from 1937 to 1952. And he was the quarterback, and he was fabulous. In the 40s, Sammy Baugh led the league in completion percentage, total completions. He led the league in yards. He led the league in touchdown passes. Sammy Baugh, to this day, still holds the record for punting in the NFL. As of 2020, his 51.4 yards per punt average for a season is still the record. Oh, and Sammy led the league in 1942 in interceptions. He didn't throw them, he caught them. He was the safety. 11 interceptions. So I just love Sammy. And the jersey was the ugliest plain Jane thing you ever want to see in your life. It was plain maroon with a number 33 on the front and back. Dave Eshelman made a lot of them, little squiggly numbers. It was a really boring, ugly jersey. Except in 2000, a guy named Jay-Z comes in, and Jay-Z says, you know, I like that Sammy Baugh jersey, and I want one. So I sold Jay-Z a Sammy Baugh jersey. He wore it in a video called Girls, Girls, Girls. That video in 2000, 2001, and part of 2002 was played on BET, MTV, and VH1 8 to 10 times a day for almost 2 years. That became by far the #1 best-selling jersey in the history of the company. We were paying Sammy $3,000 to $5,000 a month for almost 2 years in royalties. Fran would write the checks out to Sammy. Sammy Baugh, south of the mountain, Rotan, Texas, and he would get them. So one day Sammy calls me and he says, Peter, I have no idea why you're sending me all this money, but it's more money than I ever made in the NFL, and I just want to thank you. So I said, Sammy, you're a legend. You'll never be forgotten. And Sammy died in December of 2008. I never, ever could tell him the reason his jersey sold. He just thought he was the most famous quarterback in the history of the NFL. So, you know, Julie Pitts said she's going to give me the hook if I talk too long. So I'll end this a little short, and thank you from the bottom of my heart. I am really moved, more than you know. So thank you all very much.
I want to thank the National Sporting Goods Association for this wonderful honor. It's something that was totally unexpected, not even sure I deserve it, but I'm very, very happy to be inducted into the Sporting Goods Hall of Fame. We're here at the Mitchell & Ness flagship store, and I thought I would give you a little tour of the store in a few minutes and show you some of the original wool flannels that I made back in the 80s that actually launched the company. From 1987 to 1997, we exclusively did Major League Baseball vintage jerseys. And we didn't start with the NBA until 1998, the NFL in 1999, and the NHL in 2000. Mitchell & Ness was founded in 1904 by Peter Mitchell and Charles Ness, an Englishman and a Scotsman. Started out as a tennis and golf company. My father was also born in 1904 in Formia, Italy. By 1913, he was in the United States and both his parents had died. In 1917, He walked into Mitchell & Ness and asked Mr. Mitchell and Mr. Ness if he could sleep there and work there. He was 13 years old. He stayed there his whole life. He bought the company in 1952 and passed away in 1978. So it's been a long, wonderful trip, but not without a certain amount of rockiness to it. In 1983, just like any good son who inherits a business from his father, I took Mitchell & Ness right down almost to bankruptcy. It was just my wife, Joanne Graham, and myself at the store. But as fate would have it, someone walked in and asked me to repair his 1960 Pirates vest. I went over to a local manufacturer to see if they could repair it, and while I was wandering around, I noticed huge stacks of wool flannel, maybe 10, 12,000 yards. And I asked Mr. Sirkin, the owner of Maple Manufacturing, what do you do with this stuff? And he said, oh, we use it for jacket linings. They started wearing double knits in 1972, and wool flannel became instantly obsolete. That's when a little bell went off in my head, and I thought, why don't we make some wool flannel baseball jerseys? I have this Pirate sample. So I did that and put the first 6 Pirate shirts out, gave the man who wanted his repaired back and gave him one of these. I didn't know what I had started. So that led me to say, let's make more jerseys. I was lucky enough that our store was right below the largest collection of dated periodicals in the world. All the Sports Illustrated, Sporting News, and every other magazine you can think of were up there. And I would go up in those stacks, and I would do research and take them over to the local manufacturer, and we started making vintage Major League Baseball jerseys. By 1987, Sports Illustrated got a hold of us and did a story, and that launched us tremendously. Major League Baseball gave us exclusive rights to do what they call the Cooperstown Authentic Collection. Over the years, I created, along with a few other people, these volumes of research books, and we have about 26 volumes of them. The internet was not in play in those days. This research work was done in the 80s to very early 90s. I think our first computer system that we had in the company was 1992, where we could actually computerize bills. I didn't know at the time, when I was doing this, how important it would turn out to be. It's an exercise in really a love affair I had with the uniforms, with baseball, basketball, football, and hockey. We're going to take a slightly abbreviated tour of the history of Major League Baseball through the evolution of their jerseys. Most of the jerseys that you're going to see here are wool flannel. Wool flannel was the fabric used from 1883, actually 1876, all the way up until 1972. Red Sox were the last team to actually wear wool flannel. So here is a small gallery of the jerseys that we recreated, researched and recreated for the business. And this, I'll start off with the first year of the Philadelphia Phillies is 1883. This is what they wore. These shirts are all somewhat lightweight wool flannel. They're not the exact weight that was worn. This is a beautiful Chicago White Sox World Series shirt from 1917, before they were the Black Sox. I always liked that design of this, and it's just a beautiful jersey. We move on here to the Red Sox. This is a 1912 Red Sox shirt, and these are exact duplicates of what the garment would have been issued to the player in the locker room. Another hometown team, the 1927 Philadelphia Athletics, and of course, the 1927 New York Yankees. People always ask me, what is my favorite jersey? And I surprise them by telling them that it really is the St. Louis Cardinals. This is a Stan Musial from 1943, and this is, I believe, a Dizzy Dean from 1934. Great story behind the creation of the Cardinal logo by Branch Rickey in 1922, when he was the vice president of the Cardinals. But Branch Rickey is more well known for bringing Jackie Robinson into baseball. This is Jackie Robinson's 1955 World Series jersey. You may have seen LeBron James wearing it a few weeks ago, I think, at the Staples Center. Of course, we do move on, of course, to Sandy Koufax of the Los Angeles Dodgers. This is his 1963 shirt. Now, Mitchell & Ness is very popular in the entertainment industry, especially in the hip-hop rap world. Our jerseys can be seen all throughout videos during the period probably 1996 to 2005, 2006. That all began with a small store in Atlanta called Distant Replay. And my friend Andy Hyman, who created that store, would have a lot of the entertainers come in. Big Boy and Andre from Outkast were really the first musicians to wear the jerseys. They wore the Atlanta Braves 1982 and the Nolan Ryan Houston Astros. Those two jerseys catapulted Mitchell & Ness to another level of awareness in the country. And things really, really went crazy then.
And I think that's a part of what makes for an unbelievable brand and company that stands the test of time. And Peter had a vision, and the vision changed maybe over a few decades, but the vision of nostalgic jerseys and what he did to build them, and the labor of love, just like Phil Knight at Nike. I mean, his vision was to make performance products, always innovating for athletes of every level. And so to be able to take over a brand like Mitchell & Ness that had a leader who had a vision really makes our job so much easier. And obviously the quality that Peter basically introduced is still the thing that defines us. We are really excited about our growth and taking this core brand and nostalgic brand, and we are truly a global brand and business now. It's exciting, always kind of going back to the roots. So I congratulate Peter. He had a heck of a career. He's a visionary. There's only a few of those, and we wish him the best of luck, and a special congratulations on behalf of all the employees at Mitchell & Ness.
I finally sold Mitchell & Ness to Reebok Adidas in November of 2007. But the ride was amazing. It led us to the White House and the Oval Office with President H.W. Bush in 1992. It has now led to the Sporting Goods Industry Hall of Fame, of which I never expected it. I just want to thank you all again, and I am very, very honored to be here.
Thank you, Peter Coppolino.